Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. Welcome back to the channel, Ian the Reader. Today, I have a quick little book tag video for you all. I was tagged by Jake from the Bookish Drummer to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 book tag, which is quite popular on like TikTok, Booktok, and I've seen it on Instagram as well quite a bit, and it's kind of now coming into popularity on Booktube. So I was excited when he tagged me in this. It's one that I've thought about doing for a little while, and now I have an excuse. On top of that, I have not had a whole lot of time to film lately, but I want to keep getting videos out, and I have a few videos that I really am like putting a lot of effort into, which I'll get to soon, but those are going to take longer to film and edit, so I thought I would just go ahead and do this book tag, mostly unedited. That's the plan, and nice, quick, and easy. Let's jump in. So, first prompt is 5 books that I love. And for this, really for all of these, I've tried to go with books that I don't really talk about too often, or I haven't talked about a lot, at least recently. So yeah, that's what you're gonna get right now. So first up, we have This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. This is an incredible historical fiction story revolving around, I believe, 4 boys who have been at this really intense, dangerous, not good academy for boys, and something happens and they end up going on the run, and it is an epic journey of their odyssey across America. It is a perfect story of found family and what home really means, what family really means, and it's a coming of age story, which I love, obviously. William Kent Kruger is one of my favorite authors right now, and this is the first book that I read by him. I highly recommend it. It's a standalone, and you will love it. I can almost guarantee it. Next up, we have a book that I read, I want to say when I was 19 years old, and it's one that I've wanted to revisit ever since, basically. That book is Flowers for Algernon, and this is by Daniel Keyes. This is such an incredible story, one that you will think about often after you read it. I feel like most people do. If you read this book, it will leave its mark on you. We follow a young man who has some mental challenges that he faces, and he is given this experimental, I don't remember if it's a medicine or a procedure or something like that, but basically throughout the story, his intelligence slowly starts to rise. And what's so fascinating about this is the way that the story is told. You get his intelligence rising just from the writing itself, because I believe this is in first person, maybe possibly in like journal style type entries, and the spelling is different, the language is different, the characterization of himself is so different as he goes through this whole process. It is beautiful, thought-provoking, heartbreaking, and a story, like I said, that you will not soon forget. Flowers for Algernon is one. I need to reread this like ASAP, and you should read it for the first time if you haven't. It's so good. Next up, we have one of my favorite books of last year. That is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I've now read 3 or 4, I want to say 4 books by this author, and this is my favorite thus far. And you'll see another book from him on this list in just a little bit. But this is such a subtle, moving, powerful story of a man who is kind of at the end of his time, not on Earth, but as he has been living. So he has been a butler for most of his life. It's who he really identifies himself as in his profession. That's just who he is. And that time in the world of butlers and grand houses and things is kind of coming to an end, and he is now middle-aged or a little bit past that, and he's reflecting back on his life and the choices he's made, the relationships that have come and gone, and he is entering into a new stage of life, and he is full of reflection, but also wondering if it's too late or not too late to salvage some things he left behind. This is, like I said, such a subtle and moving story, one that I think about a lot. Again, like, I love these books. That's the whole point. But I recently watched the adaptation of this, which was incredible. It had Anthony Hopkins, Emma Thompson, Hugh Grant, and a handful of other great actors and actresses, and this is just a stunning book, one that I love dearly. This book is incredible. Next up, we have a classic that I feel like most people have read, but I feel like if you didn't read it in high school, you might not go back for it, and you absolutely should. That book is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is another one of my favorite books that I read last year, and honestly, one that is just one of my favorite books of all time. This book is incredible. We follow Jane Eyre, of course, as she kind of grows into womanhood, and the experiences she goes through, the challenges she faces, the relationships that work and don't work for her, and there is a great mystery to this story as well that I don't want to get too much into, but this is just one of the most compelling classics that you could ever hope to pick up. Jane is such a lovable and powerful character, somebody I was rooting for the whole time, and she acted with just such courage throughout the entire book. I was amazed by this character. I really want to read more books by Charlotte Bronte as well. I know she has one called, I believe, Villette, and I've heard good things about that, so hope to pick that up soon. But if you have not read Jane Eyre, don't be intimidated. It is a little bit on the longer side, but it flies by. This is so readable, so good. What a great character, what a great story. Next up, the final book for this prompt, we have Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby, which is one of the best crime books I've ever read, thriller crime books. I'm not really 100% sure where to categorize this as, but this is so good. I can't remember if this was my first or second S.A. Cosby book, but it was really the book that told me, okay, this guy is a new favorite author. I love this book. We follow a man named Bug. That's his name, but his real name is Beauregard, but people call him Bug. And he has been living a life of crime as a getaway driver for years and years and years, but he wants to leave that behind, but people won't let him leave it behind, and he kind of keeps getting thrust into these difficult situations that he doesn't want to participate in, but he feels like he has no choice, not only due to the people in his life who are pushing him towards it, but also just due to the world and circumstances that he has been brought up in. He feels doomed by his upbringing in some ways. But this is a really powerful story, and one that I was really moved by in ways I didn't expect. Bug is such a compelling character, both because you are rooting for him and because you are aggravated by him. He makes some choices in here that are definitely questionable, but he's a character that struggles with himself, and I found it to be so compelling. This is maybe my favorite S.A. Cosby book, but I've rated 3 of the 4 books I've read by him 5 stars, and the one I didn't rate 5 stars was very close to it. So S.A. Cosby, one of my favorite authors, highly recommend this book and any of his books if you have not read them. So yes, those are my 5 books that I love. Really good stuff. I'm just gonna set these over here. I really don't want to edit this video, you guys, so we're just doing it. Next up, 4 in this challenge is 4 books on my TBR, which I decided to go ahead and talk about 4 books that I recently acquired that are on my TBR, because honestly, I haven't read even half of the books I own, so I could have picked anything, but I decided to help myself select books, to pick books that I recently picked up. So first of those is one that I really do hope to read this month, because if I don't, I feel like I'm gonna have to wait basically a whole other year. That book is Autumn by Ali Smith. This is the first of her seasons quartet, or seasonal quartet. I'm not 100% sure what it's called exactly, but it's 4 books. Obviously, the first book being Autumn, you've got Winter, Spring, and Summer that follow after it. And so I would like to read this now. I really don't know too much about this, but Ali Smith is an author who continues to pop up anytime I'm looking for books that have great writing and are a bit experimental. I feel like I hear about Ali Smith quite a bit. And so she's an author who I've wanted to try for some time, and this just feels like the perfect time for it. I don't know why. But hopefully I end up enjoying this one. If you've read this, please let me know. Like I said, really don't know too much about it, other than that it is mainly character driven rather than plot driven, and that it is a bit experimental. So I'm in. The second one is one that I just received in the mail today from Saga Press. So thank you so much to them. You'll be seeing this in a little unboxing video that I'll be having here shortly. But the book is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is by 2 authors, Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. And this is a book that has just been everywhere for the past 3 or 4 years, however long it's been since this book came out. But this is a very short book, which gotta love that. But we follow 2 characters who are time travelers, I guess, and they're writing letters to each other. It's a love story told through letters sent to each other through time and space. I believe they're both spies. So much stuff going on in this tiny little novel. And I've also heard the writing is just exquisite. So I'm very compelled to pick this up, and I feel like it's low investment because it's literally like less than 200 pages. What more could you ask for? So very excited about having received that. Thank you again to Saga Press. And then I have 2 books that I just picked up on clearance that I'm very excited about. The first of those is the other Kazuo Ishiguro book I was talking about earlier. That is Clara and the Sun. So this is his most recent book and one that has been on my radar since it came out. But I just can't make myself buy brand new books. I can't do it. Even though I buy a lot of books and I love book buying and I love owning books, I have to find it at a good deal. And I found it finally for $3, so I picked it up. And I'm very excited about this. So this is a near future type book, and I believe it involves AI, and we are following the perspective of, I want to say, like an AI artificial friend. That's what this says. So we get that perspective, kind of taking a look at artificial intelligence, the progression of technology and society and all that jazz. I trust this author so much, and I've heard really good things about this book. So very excited to read this one. Hopefully not too far from now. We'll see when that actually happens. But the other book is very similar in that it is a book that I picked up for $3 at my local used bookstore, and one that I've wanted to read for some time and I've wanted to own for some time, but I kept putting it off because I didn't want to buy it new. That book is The Winners by Frederick Bachman. This is the 3rd and final book in the Beartown trilogy, which I have loved so far. Beartown and Us Against You, I read back to back, and I want to say like 2017 or 18, probably 2018. And I was just floored by how incredible those books were. They made my year-end list at the time. I don't think I was doing Instagram or Booktube at that point. It was really just on Goodreads and with my family book club. But Beartown and Us Against You are such incredible books, and I've wanted to read The Winners ever since, but it's quite long. And now I don't remember enough of the details of Beartown and Us Against You to really feel confident in just picking this up. So I would love to do a Beartown reread, and it is such a good winter book because it is a story that revolves around this town, Beartown, and their love for hockey and how that can bring them together but also tear them apart. And I'm so compelled to pick up this 3rd book, but I've got to reread Beartown and Us Against You, so hopefully I'll do that soon. But yes, those are the 4 books that are on my TBR, or 4 of the like countless that are on my TBR. Next 3 is 3 books that I recommend. So with this, I feel like books I love and books I recommend, and then later on we'll talk about 5-star reads, they're kind of all synonymous in some ways. So I tried to think about the different kind of levels of that. So with this one being 3 books that I recommend, I wanted to go with books that I don't really hear people talk about as much, and I feel like deserve a lot of attention. So first up, we have one of my absolute favorite books of the last few years. It's called We Are the Light by Matthew Quick. I adore this book. Matthew Quick is one of my favorite authors as well. I've read everything he's written, and I believe he's written 9 novels. I'll do a ranking of his books at some point, but I was kind of waiting to see if he would release news about another one since it's been 2 years since this came out before I did that. We'll see. But yeah, We Are the Light is probably my favorite book by him, which is really saying something because I've loved so many of his books. But We Are the Light follows a man who is having a hard time. A terrible tragedy took place in his town, and he was pivotally involved in it in a way that made people kind of look at him in a different way. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I feel like discovering everything that happened is so crucial to your first time reading this book. But he is now writing letters to his therapist who refuses to see him anymore. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on with this character. But this is such an incredible story of hope and healing, trauma and love, and the way people come together in hard times. It is such a moving and impactful story that lives in my brain rent-free, in good ways and bad ways, because this book was painful to read at times, but it also left me with such a feeling of hope, which a traumatic book doing that just speaks to the resilience of humanity, how we can go through terrible, terrible things and then still feel hopeful at the end of the day. And that's the embodiment of this book. It's incredible. I hope that that sold you on it, because We Are the Light is incredible. I love it so much. Next we have A Prayer for O and Me by John Irving. This is the only John Irving book that I have thus read. Is that a way of saying that? Who cares? Yeah, so I've read this book, and ever since I've been so eager to pick up another one of his books. But partly, I just can't decide where to go because there are so many books from him. I am thinking maybe The World According to Garp. I think that's what that book is called, or The Cider House Rules. Those two are the ones that are really talked about in addition to this one. So one of those two. But anyway, A Prayer for Owen Meany is a coming-of-age story about a young boy and really his friendship with Owen Meany. So Owen Meany is not the main character, or he sort of is, but he's not the narrator. And so it's about their friendship growing up from childhood on into adulthood. But something happens at the beginning of the story that Owen does that forever changes the narrator's life in kind of a bad way. And I don't want to reveal what that is, but there's an accident that takes place and Owen is to blame. And it is such a slow story, so if you don't like a slow character-driven novel, don't pick this up, because it is. But it's a story that you have to really commit to the journey of, and how it's, in some ways, you feel like you're growing up with these characters, and you're experiencing them in the highs and the lows and the weirds, because some weird stuff happens in this book as well. But it's so interesting. What I love about this novel is the dominoes that the author kind of sets up throughout the story, and you don't really understand why things are happening the way they are, or why the characters are doing certain things, but then the payoff is the final domino dropping to the ground, and you didn't even realize it was all happening until it's over. The ending of this book is one I think about often. It is a really powerful ending and a journey that I won't forget, and one that I would really like to revisit now having gotten to the end of it. But I need to read other John Irving books before I do that, so I'm not reading that anytime soon. And the final book is one that is totally out of left field, considering everything else that I've talked about thus far, but it is book one in the Wingfeather saga, which is called On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. And this is by Andrew Peterson. This is just the most delightful middle grade book. I don't even really know what to tell you about it. We follow a young group of characters. Their names are Janner, Tink, and Lily Igby, and their trusty dog Nugget. I don't even want to tell you about it, anything. It's got adventure apparel, lost jewels, and the fearsome toothy cows of Scree. If you just want a book to delight you, pick this up. And I feel like we all need that right now. It's just a book that is going to delight you. And this absolutely will. Family, both found and blood, and just the most heartwarming moments and ridiculousness, but all with just the most heart you could possibly imagine. So yes, highly recommend this book. And it's a finished series as well. So if you're looking for that, go for it. Now we're on to number 2, which is my 2 most recent 5-star reads. First of those is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. And I always hold this book like this because the Goodwill sticker is still on here. I got this book for $10 at Goodwill, which at the time was a great find. Still is a great find, but I can't get the sticker off. I could if I just used some Goo Gone, but I haven't worked up the gumption to do it yet. And every time I try to take it off, it's just so obnoxious. So I'm gonna hold my hand right here and we're gonna pretend like there's no sticker there. Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson is, as of right now, the most recent book in the Stormlight Archive. Of course, we're less than a month out from Wind and Truth, so very excited about that. But of course, I rated this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite of the Stormlight Archive books, not my favorite, not my least favorite though, but a great novel. It really follows the mental health journeys of quite a few characters, which I really enjoyed. How much Brandon Sanderson delved into that in this book. And additionally, we just get some new world building and magic system stuff that I did not anticipate, and I found it really compelling. I can completely understand why that won't necessarily work for everyone, but for me, I was invested. So yeah, so there's that book. I'm really just throwing books everywhere. I've got books over here and books over there, and it's a blast. But my most recent 5-star read is The Hour I First Believed by Wally Lamb. Man, you guys, Wally Lamb is the man. So now I've read 2 books by him. Before I'd only read 1. The first being I Know This Much Is True, which is my 3rd favorite novel of all time. And now I've read this one, The Hour I First Believed. You know, what's interesting about this guy is he writes books that are really, he threads different stories together in ways that I never expect, at least thus far. So we have the main story, of course, which follows a man and his wife who were teachers at Columbine High School during the massacre that took place there. But additionally, there is this longer multi-generational story that kind of comes into play almost at the halfway point, and you're kind of wondering, where's the author going with this? But ultimately, it's a story about legacy. It's a story about identity, and it's a story about the decisions that our parents make and our family members make, both near and ancestral, and how those things impact who we are today. It's really good. It's really good. I wouldn't say that I liked it as much as I know this much is true, but I really enjoyed this book. It was fantastic. So yeah, those are my 2 most recent 5-star reads. And finally, number 1. A current read, and for that I have The Shining by Stephen King. This is a reread for me, but it is our current read for the Stephen King book club. We're reading it in November and reading Dr. Sleep in December, so perfect time to join the Stephen King book club. I'll leave a link to the Discord to do so down below, but this is a blast. Not a fun blast in that, you know, some pretty gnarly stuff happens in it, but I'm enjoying this even more upon reread. It's about a family who go and are caretakers for this gigantic, luxurious hotel through some winter season as they descend into snow, and madness. What more could you want out of a book? The Shining's great. The Shining is great. That's it, guys. Those are all of the prompts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you want to make this video, do it, because it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you think of them, what you think of my thoughts on them. Just say whatever you want. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.